Hello and welcome to my study channel. Today I wanted to talk about 8 ways to prepare for your final exam. I know many of us are college students and we're pretty nervous about preparing for the final exam. Some of these tips can be used for any exam, but especially for final exams. These are some of the tips that have helped me to do well on my final. So number 1 is to review previous homework assignments. The reason why I bring this up is because a lot of professors use homework assignments as a guideline when they make exams. There have been many situations where I have taken an exam and I recognize that quite a few of the exam questions were very similar to homework questions that he assigned. Now, this may be online homework or paper and pen homework, but regardless, I would review that information. And especially if you got any of the questions wrong, I would try to make sure that I learn how to correct those answers. If you still don't know the correct answer, I would email the professor or try to contact them over the internet to see if indeed they can help you figure out the right answer so that you can study all of the correct answers and understand the concept behind it. I remember my father actually used to make a joke about this. If I came home with a 98%, he used to ask me, where did the other 2% go? And so, as strict as that may sound, what he was trying to get me to understand is that even if you get a really good grade, it's still important to understand what you got wrong, because many professors will put certain questions on the exam that are very similar to homework questions. And some professors will even use the most difficult questions. And what I mean by that is sometimes the professor will take the questions that most students got wrong and put that on the exam. And so sometimes they'll notice that 80% of the students got question number 5 wrong, and they'll go and put that specific question or an alternate version of that question on the exam. So by correcting your homework assignments, it's much easier for you to actually do better on the exam because you're covering all the bases and you're not leaving any stone unturned. Number 2 is to review prior quizzes. So not all professors do this, but some professors will have quizzes. Some professors will have only exams, and other professors will have quizzes and exams. The reason why I recommend this is for the same reason that I recommended homework assignment reviews. A lot of times the professor will take some of those quiz questions and will alter them or even use the same question word for word and put it on the exam. So what I would do is I would do the same thing. I would make sure that if there was anything that I got wrong on the quiz, I would make sure that I know what the correct answer is and that I understand how to get to the right answer. What is the concept? What did I miss? Did I misunderstand something? Did I misread the question? And then you can even create your own practice problems that are similar to those questions and test yourself to make sure that you're prepared. Number 3 is if your final exam is cumulative, which can make things a little bit more difficult, what I would do is I would not cover all of the information equally. What I would do is I would look at all of the relevant chapter summaries. So let's say that you covered 12 chapters in a whole semester. What I would recommend is that you go through all the summaries of each chapter. If you happen to come across a summary that is very familiar to you and you already understand all of the main concepts, then you can skip to the next chapter. If you stumble across a chapter that is very confusing, then I would review that chapter and go more in depth. I would go over information such as your notes and key terms, and I would put more time and energy into the more difficult chapters than the chapters that you already understand. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't review the information that you already know. You still do need to brush up on the information, but not nearly as much as you do need to pay attention to the more difficult chapters. Number 4, when you are studying for your final, I would recommend that you practice studying using recall. So, I would recommend a recall method of studying. So this is the type of studying where you are forced to retrieve information from your brain without any assistance. So you're not using visual aids, books, or notes. So examples of this would be flashcards, practice questions, or you can even create your own charts or diagrams. The reason why I recommend this is because if you practice using recall is often the most efficient way to study, because when you take your exam is going to force you to retrieve information without a book and without your notes, unless you're doing an open book exam. But for the most part, most of you will not be doing an open book exam. And even if you do an open book exam, you still need to study the information in order to even know what the correct answer is, or to even find what the correct answers are. So, your practice needs to be just as hard as your play. One of the things that I learned from playing sports is that your practice needs to be just as hard as your play, if not harder than your play. So the play would be the test and the practice would be the studying. So if you study harder than the exam, you're more likely to pass the exam. So by recalling the information, even if you're doing a multiple choice question, which is not completely recall, the fact that you had to recall it with no prompts and no help will make multiple choice a lot easier when you do take the exam. Number 5. I think I sort of touched on this before, but I will reiterate it. So spend more of your time reviewing the most difficult information, and the easy information I would spend less time focusing on. So I would not focus as much on the easier types of information. I would focus on the harder information. Number 6, take advantage of auditory learning. One of the ways you can do this is you can record yourself speaking or reading material and then playing it back. Sometimes what I would do is I would read my class notes or the PowerPoint notes. I can also read my textbook or any type of material that would most likely be on the exam. And what you can do is play it back while you're driving or while you are cleaning up the house. You know, if you can multitask, you can do many things while you're listening. Sometimes, some people exercise while they're listening to music. So if you are exercising, you could be listening to your own voice while you are exercising. The reason why I recommend this is because it really is great for auditory learners. I tend to have an easier time learning by listening versus reading words on a page. Number 7, try to space out your study sessions. So take a little break after a certain period of time. 20 to 30 minutes, I think, is a really good time to study. And then once your study session is over, you could take a 5 or 10-minute break so that your mind can have a rest. If you study in intervals, it makes it easier for you to retain information. The information can also sink better into your mind, and this can make your study task seem achievable. Number 8 is to relax. Try to cut down on studying the night before the exam. I had one professor who recommended to not study at all the day before. You don't have to do this, but I do recommend at least cutting down on the studying the night before or the day before the exam, because resting your mind helps you to perform better the next day. So those are my tips for today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions or recommendations or any topics that you would like me to cover, please let me know. Thank you and have a great day. Goodbye.